host, Paul Miller, and I'm so honored to be joined by one of my favorite guests that I get to have each and every single term, and that would be the Director of Career Services, Steve Hassinger. Steve, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you, Paul. It's always a pleasure to be on.
Well, also being joined by the Nightly News Vice President, Andrew Hunter. Andrew, of course, it's always a pleasure to have you on the podcast as well, and you're definitely looking forward to the soccer season. Andrew is one of our illustrious soccer players, and your season's going to kick off here. By the time this is released, you already have played your first game, so where do you guys sit as far as how things are going and what you're looking forward to with the soccer season?
We're definitely above schedule than compared to last year. We're really gelling as a team so far.
Well, good. And like I said, we will be having some coverage. Abby Bresky, our president, is going to be out, and she's going to be doing some streaming, some photo, and doing some game wraps. Just talked to her today, and she is super excited about that. So please stay tuned to the Nightly News Media Club page. That's cpcnightlynews.com for all the game wraps and photos of our soccer team. But today we are going to talk about some wonderful things, and in fact, probably the busiest time of year for our career services team. Two huge events coming up in the months of September and October. First of all, we have the Business Partner of the Year breakfast. It's going to be taking place on September 7th from 8:30 to 10:30 in the Conference Center. To sign up, you can go to givebutter.com/BPOY2023 to register. Also looking, today we're going to talk about the CPEC Job Fair, the Tailgate and Relate on Wednesday, October 11th from 11 to 2 at Adams Rickey Park. Of course, you can find CPEC on Facebook and LinkedIn for more information, or of course, any of this stuff, we can reach out to you directly or to careerservices@centralpenn.edu. Well, Steve, that was a mouthful. Let's start off with the Business Partner of the Year breakfast. This is something that takes place every summer term and looks to acknowledge a business partner that has worked with not only Central Penn College as a whole, but with career services to try to facilitate numerous things, mainly internships and first career positions for people outside and graduates of Central Penn College. So let's talk a little bit about the Business Partner of the Year breakfast, what people can expect, what they might get if they come, and what some of the takeaways from that are. So let's start at the beginning. Business Partner of the Year breakfast, Steve, what is it?
Absolutely. My favorite event of the year. This is something that we started 19 years ago, believe it or not, and it has really evolved over the years. We looked at it. We said, like anything, we're constantly assessing and saying, how can we make it even better? What are we missing that we could add? So we now have not only our Business Partner of the Year, but we also recognize and honor 2 interns of the year. And this year, for the very first time, you may not even know this yet, we are actually going to recognize 2 internship site coordinators of the year who have worked very closely with our students and with the college. So that's an interesting new add for this year. We start off, obviously, with a big buffet breakfast. It is a breakfast. And when students register, or faculty and staff, they can add a promo code of student or staff, and they can get their ticket for free. For business partners, they're paying $20 typically to be able to come, or they're doing sponsorships. So we're going to have breakfast, and then Dr. Fedrizzi, our president, is going to have some welcoming remarks, and then we will have a keynote speaker. And our keynote speaker this year is going to be Karen Young, who is the founder and CEO of HR Resolutions, which is a human resources consulting firm here in Harrisburg. She is also an author, and she's recently released her 3rd book, and everybody who comes is going to get a free copy. Her book is entitled Sought After: How to Be Heard, Be Trusted, and Be Recognized for Your Expertise. So that's an exciting ad for us this year as well. And the overall theme for the event is going to be igniting professional excellence. So after her keynote speech, we will have a town meeting, which I really enjoy. I will moderate that. We have a bunch of questions that we will toss out, and we will allow faculty, staff, employers, students, anybody who's in the room to chime in on those topics around the topic of igniting professional excellence. And then obviously we will culminate with recognizing our Business Partner of the Year, our Interns of the Year, and our Internship Site Coordinators of the Year.
Now let me go back to last year. The Business Partner of the Year in 2022 was the Harrisburg Senators, and it was a combination of things between not only the access that us as the news team got being at FMB Field, but also the way that they worked with our sports teams to not only set up the FMB Field with the baseball, but also the Skyline Sports Complex with soccer. So they were clearly a worthy business partner of the year in what they've done, and also helping us develop some of our sports management classes. This year, is it a surprise who it is this year? I don't want to share it if you're not comfortable. We can all hold our breath until it happens. But if you'd like to give them a shout out here, I'd love to talk more about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is one of the things that's evolved over the years, because in the early years, it was a surprise, and there was a time when we had like 3 finalists, and everybody would hopefully show up, and we would announce the winner at the event. For various reasons, we have decided the last couple of years to announce who the winner is going to be ahead of time and notify them ahead of time. So it is going to be Select Medical this year. And for a myriad of reasons, some of which are kind of related to some of the things that you said about sports programming, because they are now providing athletic trainers for us. So a big relationship there as far as that goes. From a career services standpoint, Select Medical has been a good business partner for us for years, because one of the things that I really enjoy is they hire from just about every program that we offer here at Central Penn. Select Physical Therapy has hired physical therapist assistants, occupational therapist assistants. They have a huge business and accounting function here in Mechanicsburg at their corporate headquarters. So they've hired a number of business graduates, accounting graduates over the years, communications, IT, they have a big IT function. So they've hired from just about every program that we offer. So it really seemed like it was the right time to recognize Select Medical as our business partner of the year.
No, I want to go to a second question. Let's say students are out there, or even faculty, in terms of maybe still bringing their entire classes along, which is something that I've done. But I want to kind of look at it from a student perspective. We can certainly get back into Select and a bit more about that. But from a student perspective, all of that's wonderful. What are the advantages for a student to be there at this event? What options or opportunities exist for the students as part of this event?
Yeah, well, in addition to that nice big buffet breakfast for free, right, which is always good, you feed college students. But in addition to that, there are a lot of advantages. Number one, I think they're going to enjoy and get some real practical advice from our keynote speaker and from her book that they're going to get for free about getting started or advancing in your career. I think that's one thing that they're really going to get. Another thing is just being able to make some connections. I think there's at least 15 or 20 different companies that are going to be represented there, that are going to have representatives. I can tell you that a few years ago, I know our one intern of the year, people were so impressed with what he had done that I think 4 or 5 people came up to him before we ever left that morning and said, "We want to talk to you."
I remember you talking about that, and that's why I wanted to bring that up. So I want to shift over to Andrew here real quick. So Andrew is one of the greatest students on campus right now. He's got his hands in everything. He's the vice president of the school. He's a senior leader on the soccer team, but he's also just an amazing student, academic All-American. Andrew, I think the bad thing for Central Penn, the good thing for you, you're out of here in 2 terms after this one. Yep. How do you think going to an event like this, or how might you approach it? I know this is your first business partner of the year breakfast, but now based on what Steve just said, how might you be able to leverage this opportunity to maybe expand your own network?
Probably just trying to talk to every business I can. I mean, I've already done my internship with the Harrisburg Heat, but it would definitely not hurt to do another one to expand my resume and get my foot in the door in other businesses.
Well, and Steve, another thing that we talk about quite a lot is the purpose of engaging in some of these networking events. It's not necessarily that every connection you have is going to pay off in the end, but one of the things that I think students somewhat struggle with is what network have they built during college and what network do they have when they get out? Right. Because once, unfortunately, students leave the college confines, they are not going to have quite as many opportunities to do these types of things. Of course, you always have and encourage alumni to come to your events, but frankly, once college is sort of in the rear view, that maybe isn't at the forefront. Yeah. So can you also talk about maybe somebody in Andrew's position, what are some things that they might be able to do in their last couple of terms while they're here and how they might be able to leverage this specific event?
Yeah, well, for one thing, I think it can be really intimidating, right, to a college student who it has not yet started in their career. They're looking to get started, and to go to an event with 95 or 100 other people, and for me to toss out a question and for them to kind of raise their hand and stand up and be able to give their input is really intimidating. So I always try to have at least one or two questions that are geared towards students. And I'll always try to look to maybe an Andrew or somebody else in the room and maybe say to them ahead of time, like, if nobody jumps in here, would you jump in? And then what I find is once somebody does it, it's easier for other people. So I think just being able to make your voice heard, to practice networking, and it might not even be standing up during the town hall meeting. It might just be somebody else who's seated at that table with you. And you never know who they know. So your connection for your internship or your job might not come from this, but there might be somebody who you met who's pretty impressed with you, and maybe you connect with them on LinkedIn or some other way via social media, or you exchange email addresses or whatever. And, the next day they're out and they're talking to somebody and they're saying, hey, I'm looking for an intern for this position, or I'm looking for an employee. And they say, you know what? I was sitting with a student yesterday who might be a great connection. So we know the power of networking and how powerful that can be. So I think this is a great opportunity to practice some of those networking skills, to get out there, start to get comfortable in these types of settings.
Last question I want to ask you about the Business Partner of the Year breakfast. The way that you do it is you have sort of assigned seats, correct?
We used to do that. It became a little bit difficult doing that. So we aren't necessarily going to assign seats. However, we can make the list of attendees available, and we will strategically look to help people make connections while we're there.
And I think that's the point that I was trying to make here. Like, one of the greatest things in my mind about Business Partner of the Year is people it's not sort of siloed in that there are business people represented, faculty and staff people represented, and students at each table, which even though it's not assigned seating per se, you're still going to try to work on that.
Right.
The students have the opportunity to meet at least at a minimum one, business partner, and certainly another faculty or staff member who they may not already know. So the chances for networking with companies, with influential people in terms of faculty and other students is really something special. And there is a sort of a networking time, certainly while you're eating, that you can get to know the other people as well. Would you recommend that people bring resumes along just in case they run into someone?
It can't hurt to have a resume available and to be able to give it to them. Yes, right there at the spot, because, like I said, you don't know who you're going to meet. You don't know what kind of opportunities might be out there. Somebody might be actively searching at this time. Or if they're not actively searching, but you think you would really like to work for that organization, for that individual, to say, hey, can I give you a resume that you can take with you? Absolutely.
Well, one last time, that's the Business Partner of the Year breakfast. That's going to be on September 7th from 8:30 to 10:30 a.m. at givebutter.com/BPOY2023 to register. Students, put in promo code STUDENT. Faculty and staff, put in promo code STAFF for free breakfast. And again, I think, Steve, I don't like speaking for you, but I'm pretty sure it's safe to say that should any faculty or staff members want to attend, or faculty members bring their classes, that is certainly a possibility for you to do as well. Reach out to Steve at
Absolutely.
Steve Hassinger Steve Hassinger at centralpenn.edu.
Correct.
All right, we're going to move on to the second piece. And typically in the past, we've kind of had you on two different times to talk about these. But the CPEC Job Fair is coming up very early on. In fact, week 1 of the fall term, Wednesday, October 11th from 11 to 2. Now, people historically who have been a part of CPEC might remember it was over at the old Radisson in Camp Hill. But as of last year, the format of the CPEC Job Fair has changed to Tailgate and Relate, a bit more of a more casual experience, outdoor, and really something different. And I do want to talk to Andrew in a moment about this, because he was in attendance last year and get his sort of feedback. But this is sort of a new direction for not only just career services events and networking events in general, but job fairs. So tell me, in hindsight, tell us a little bit more about how this changed, but also what and how you felt it went, and if this is sort of the future for job fairs.
Yeah, so CPEC is an organization that's made up of 14 different colleges and universities, as well as employer members that are part of our advisory council. And we meet throughout the year, typically 4, 5, 6 times, primarily to plan this event, and also to do professional development. So what we were noticing was that attendance at the job fair at the former Radisson, now the Penn Harris, was going down each year in terms of the job seekers that were coming. The employers were still coming, but we were seeing less job seekers. And, in talking to some students, again, it can be a little intimidating, have to dress up, maybe put a tie on, and go over there with these business professionals and so forth. It can be a little intimidating to do that. And obviously, it's expensive to hold an event like that at a venue like that. So as we were talking, we said, let's try something different. Again, you're constantly assessing and trying to figure out how to make things better. So what we came up with was doing this more casual tailgate and relate event. Last year was the first event, as you said, and some employers brought their cornhole boards, prize wheels, different types of games and things like that they could use to interact with students. Obviously, you could dress a little more casually. It was outside on a soccer field, and you could still build those relationships with the employers, maybe a little bit less intimidating. We had some food trucks there. We'll have some food trucks there this year. Students who come from the CPEC schools, so from Central Penn, will get a food ticket that they can use to go to the food trucks and have free lunch as well. And what we saw last year was we had about the same number of attendees as we did at the indoor event the year before. And while I would say, there wasn't a huge volume of students, the ones who came seemed to make some really good connections. There was good quality there on those connections. So we said, yeah, let's do it again. Let's try it again.
So, Andrew, I want to ask you, so this was something that you were a part of last year. You went as part of our media writing class last year. And now that you've been there once, hopefully you've kind of learned some lessons. But tell me your impressions, like when I'm saying, hey, we got to go to this job fair, and then we go outside and you're playing cornhole out at Adams Rickey Park. Like, tell me what your thought process was when you went, and then maybe how that might have changed after you experienced the event.
I always dreaded going to job fairs because I hate dressing up, especially with a tie. I've never actually worn a tie. I don't plan on it for a little bit. But when I heard it was outside at Adams Rickey Park, I was kind of excited to go because it was outside. You can wear not anything you want, but maybe like a nice sweatshirt and some nice jeans. And then it felt, when I was talking to employers, it felt like I was talking to not like a higher up level manager. I was talking to like another person, and then it was just more comfortable for the student.
Seemed to me, Steve, and again, I usually use these job fairs because, part of my job is to cultivate relationships, to get communication internships. It was so much easier to talk to people because it almost seemed like they just had a different mindset. And it was more so not necessarily about, hey, do you have this specific job? It's more like, hey, I'm interested in sharing with you more about our company because, correct me if I'm wrong, anymore with the job search, it's almost like you have to sell the employee on the company and wanting to spend, at least a portion of your career with this company. And it almost has to be like we as job seekers, I don't want to say we because I have a job, but job seekers in general need to buy into the companies that they're working for. Did you think maybe the sort of tone of the whole thing shifted because of that?
I think so, and I think Andrew made a good point there. I think it's more of a relationship. Like you feel more comfortable just talking to that individual in a more relaxed type of setting and getting a feel for, are they real? Sometimes, for lack of a better term, you go to the job fair, you see the person there with the tie and the suit, and they're all dressed up and everything, and it's like, is this real? Is this what they're really like? They're tossing cornhole bags or doing whatever, it's like, yeah, it's a little more laid back and it's a little more real. And I think what you said is right. It's interesting because we're seeing employers do, I think, in many cases, a much more lengthy and thorough screening process. But we're also seeing the job seekers, as you said, do the same thing because we want to find out, is this a good fit both ways, right? Is this a good employee for this company? But from an employee standpoint, is this a good company where I can go and I can thrive and I can make a difference as well?
Absolutely. Well, I got to tell you, this is, again, probably a whirlwind time of the year for you with two big events just a little bit over a month apart. Again, the Business Partner of the Year breakfast on September 7th from 8:30 to 10:30. You can register at givebutter.com/BPOY2023. We also, of course, talked today about the CPEC Job Fair and Tailgate and Relate on Wednesday, October 11th from 11 to 2 at Adams Ricky Park. Again, you can go to the CPEC page on Facebook or LinkedIn. You can also go to cpec.info for additional information as the Tailgate and Relate comes soon. So, Steve, any final thoughts in terms of what students can expect from these events, or just generally speaking?
Whether you're in your first term or in your last term or somewhere in between, I think you can find value in these events. It's never too early to start making connections, to start building relationships. I've said before on these podcasts, some of these employers will come to multiple events. You'll see the same person over and over. And I've actually had employers who have come to me and said, hey, isn't Andrew about ready to graduate? We've seen him at some of these events. We're really impressed with him. So we actually get to the point where sometimes employers are asking for students and how soon can I hire them, right? So it's never too late to make those connections. The last thing I would say about CPEC is obviously it is an outdoor event. We do have a rain date the following day if the weather would happen to be really bad that day and wash us out. We were really blessed last year with great weather. So hopefully we'll have good weather again, but October 12th would be a rain date.
And Andrew, since you've had the chance to go to CPEC last year, this is a similar type of situation, how might you approach it differently this year?
I'll probably scout out all the businesses before. I skimmed it before, like 20 minutes before I got to the park, but I'll research everybody. I'll research all the companies and see if I'm actually interested in any of those particular companies.
And I think that's a great approach. I think a lot of students might go and say, well, I want to talk to everybody. That's not necessarily, like, in my opinion, the guidance I give students is, hey, let's start with 5. Let's start with 5 companies you're interested in talking to and then kind of take them one at a time. And then from there, yeah, if there's more companies there that you want to talk to, then do that. But kind of just having a focused approach.
Sure.
Well, Steve, it's always such a pleasure to get to chat with you more about what Career Services is doing. Of course, we'll have you on again soon. I'm going to let you get through these 2 events, but we'll have you back and see how these 2 events go.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Well, hey, that's going to do it for this episode of the Nightly News Podcast. I want to thank Career Services Director Steve Hassinger for joining us. Also, thank you very much, Andrew, and best of luck on the soccer season.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. That's going to do it for this episode of the Nightly News Podcast for Steve Hassinger and Andrew Hunter. This is Professor Paul Miller, and I'll see you again next time on the Nightly News Podcast.
This is Andrew Hunter, Nightly News sports reporter, and you're listening to the Nightly News Podcast.
Welcome, everybody, to the Nightly News Podcast. This is Professor Paul Miller, and I am so honored to be joined by 2 of my favorite people here on this campus. Lindsay Garber, you are the Director of Residence Life, so it's so wonderful to have you on the show today.
Thank you, Paul.
And, of course, Sarah Walters, who's not only one of our illustrious Nightly News Media Club members, she's also very active in the Colleges Against Cancer Club, as well as an RA. I don't know how you find time in the day to do all of these things, plus have a social life and a job. Maybe you can share that with us. That might be helpful. But welcome back to the show, Sarah.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, it's our pleasure. All right, so we've got a lot of big things to talk about here, Lindsay. We actually haven't had you on for a little while. I'm trying to remember when the last time you were on. I think it was last year around this time, if I'm not mistaken.
It might have been. It might have been the fall. I feel like it might have been fall term.
Well, this is as good of a time as any to have you on because there's a lot of not only new but continued initiatives that we have here on campus. We're talking about things like the college pantry, a little bit of a shift in meal plans, so we're here to kind of go over that. And you have a sort of a new RA program. You got some new RAs coming in, so we can talk about that as well. And I also did want to give sort of a shout out to the health suite that we have as well. We did do a story about the health suite, which you can check out at cpcnightlynews.com. But I want to talk just a little bit more about those services as well, if you don't mind.
Sure.
All right, well, let's start off with the sort of the new things going on with the RA program. So, again, since we've had you on last, the RA program has somewhat shifted and evolved. So can you share with us maybe some updates that you've experienced as part of the RA program over the past year?
Yes, I'd love to. So the first thing that we have done with the student RA program is we've actually expanded it. So last year, I don't know if you remember, we had 4 resident assistants. This year, we've doubled that. We have 8. So they all started at the beginning of the summer term. They went through their training. We we updated some different pieces of their training and had to do some adjustments with some of the student services reorganization that occurred. So some of those they were able to step in, give some more support to our residents so that they know where to go when they need tutoring or they have mental health concerns and they just need that extra support for asking questions. So giving them a little bit more time with their residents instead of having to cover such a large area, they're able to focus more on a set number of houses. And that has seemed to be working a lot better. I don't know if Sarah wants to chime in on that, but that has been working a lot better for the success of our students and just getting to know our students.
Yes. So, Sarah, you're an RA. So let's talk a little bit about what that entails, what your role is, and maybe why that's rewarding to you in some way, or is it rewarding to you in some way, I might ask.
So since we've doubled our team, it's taken, I don't want to say a lot of responsibility off, but I want to say pressure off the 4 RAs because now we now have about 7 or 8 people to communicate with instead of just the other 3 RAs to ask for opinions and, hey, what would you do in this situation? Hey, I need some help here. Can you come out and help me with this? So it's really helps relieve some stress off of our shoulders.
And what impact do you think that has on your residents ultimately, that you're able to be more accessible to them in a whole wide variety of circumstances?
I think it makes a big difference that we can be there more often because there's more of us.
Well, I think that's wonderful. Now, I know that fall is always the big incoming term. How do you think that's all going to work out with the number of incoming students that we're going to have? Do you think this is just sort of the calm before the storm here over the summer term when our traditional residential population is a little bit lower than it's going to be in just a few weeks?
I think it's good practice to have all of us here now with the small amount of students that are here now versus the fall. So I think it'll be good to have all of us well practiced and ready for the big storm that's about to come.
And what Lindsay just said, too, is that you're able to engage in some of this training that you wouldn't probably have the ability or time to do when there's many more people here on campus. So if nothing else, you're having sort of a test run of these 8 RAs, but you're also getting in crucial training that you're going to be able to apply once the new incoming residents come in as well. Before we get off of the RA program, I know that you are looking forward to fall. How much different is it between summer and fall here at Central Penn, seeing that most of our new students do come in the fall term?
Well, it's very different in housing. We average about 100 students that live on campus for the summer term, and we easily double that going into the fall term. So it's not just new students coming in. We have a lot of housing students that take the summer term off, whether it's for athletic reasons or they just want to go home and just have a break. But when they come back in the fall, we get a substantial amount through new students, but we can't forget those returners.
Absolutely.
So it is a lot.
Now, let me ask you, I know that you're always sort of looking for RAs. Talk to me about what some of the advantages are to being an RA, in addition to maybe some of the perks, in terms of potential putting it on your resume. Tell me about what some of the advantages are to being an RA here at Central Penn, and maybe give a pitch to somebody who might be interested.
So the perks that come with the position, the compensation piece, is you get free housing, you get free utilities, free meal plan. So we'll talk about the new meal plans here in a minute, but it's the 740, 10 meals a week. That's the free one that's included for the RA compensation. And they also get a $1,000 stipend for the term.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and we've come a long way. When I first took over housing here, it was just free housing for the RAs. That was it. So being able to
That was
share,
it. That's still a lot. But of course, we
yes,
have our free housing initiative now.
Sorry, didn't mean to downplay that. That is huge. But being able to see the pieces come together as we've gone through the years and being able to make the strides we've made for the RA team, because they do a lot of work. I always say they're the
thankless work too, I might add.
It is. They're the unsung heroes. They really are. So you got to think every cleaning issue, every disagreement with a resident, between residents, they step in and handle that.
They have disagreements?
Yeah, I know. Seven individuals living together. Who would have thought?
I can't possibly imagine.
Who would have thought of that? So they're the ones that step in and they mediate that stuff. And they also work with just getting acclimated to college. You're coming in as a freshman, who do you ask questions to? Like, we give you a lot on move-in weekend, but you still have to get acclimated. You still have to get used to it. You have to know, okay, mom's not here to make sure I do X, Y, Z. Like, there's things like that you have to get used to doing, and you're also getting used to doing that with 6 other people in your house.
Who almost always are probably in very similar circumstances to you.
Correct. So having that line of support from a student who's just like you is huge. And I think people easily forget that. I can go out there and tell you how to clean your vanity. I can go out there and tell you how to find a tutor, but it just resonates and hits different when it's coming from another student leader. And I think that's easily forgotten. Like, you're building those valuable skills working as a student RA just by those interactions. You're learning how to work through problems. You're building those problem-solving skills. You're working on your communication skills, and most importantly, your leadership skills. And those are skills that are transferable to any job you're going to
100%.
have. You're not going to have, even people, they always say you hide behind your phone or you're on social media or whatever. Okay, but in real life, when you're working, it doesn't matter if you run social media. You still have to talk to other people to get those things to work through and be successful. So those are skills that they pick up, and people really don't always think about that.
Sarah, tell me a little bit more about your experience. Of course, I'm sure there are highs and lows, but in terms of your expectations of what being an RA is like, tell me, what a normal day is for you, and what are those things that are helping you to develop some of these skills, whether it's responsibility, leadership, or what have you.
So to add on to what Lindsay said, another thing that I really appreciate is the networking aspect. A lot of people around campus, professors and administration, when I introduce myself, I kind of just say, hi, my name is Sarah. I'm an RA around here. And immediately it's kind of like, then it's kind of just leads into a different conversation. So I think meeting different people because I'm an RA, I've had that opportunity being on the housing
Open
staff.
doors for you.
Absolutely. There's no question about that. And one of the most common interview questions that you're going to get is a lot of leadership questions. Mm-hmm. And so tell me about it, one of these kind of questions. Tell me about a time that you had to diffuse a negative situation, or you illustrated leadership techniques. I mean, you can go back to your knowledge of being an RA and use that in an interview setting. I think in the long run, you're really going to have a different appreciation for this task that you're a part of. And I'm happy that these new students are in your hands, Sarah, because you are a wonderful person. You're extremely conscientious. You're also a fun person as well, but you also know when it's time to get serious. And I think that you're going to be I don't want to say going to be, you are an extremely positive role model for these students. Mm-hmm. I mean, they could do worse than emulating how you are. I mean, trust me. So, well, bottom line is, if anyone out there is interested in potentially being an RA going forward, I highly encourage you to reach out to Lindsay. I would give you her information, but if you're living on campus, you already know her and know how to get in touch with her. But of course, I'll put her email along with this. So you segued into our next piece. There are going to be some changes to the meal plan. And what I can say that I do know is that coming into this term, when you went to the Night and Day Cafe or Will's Place, it was sort of a balance where you had a pool of money, and as you went through and bought your food, that pool would be reduced. The problem that we ran into is that there would be situations where people would run out of money at different points in the term. You're saying here as early as week 5 to even midterms, and then not have any meal plan money for the rest of the term. Now what we have is we've built in sort of a swipe system where you have a certain number of swipes per week. Of course, there is still additional funds you can put on there for Will's Place if you want to go above and beyond that. But this way, we're at least assuring that our students are going to have meals for the entire 11 weeks. Would you say I did a good job of characterizing that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So share with me some of the issues here. Like, why was this change made, and what do you think the potential benefits of it are?
So we started exploring this switch a number of years ago because we kept running into situation after situation after situation. And I know we'll talk about the pantry here in a little bit.
You're just hitting all my
I really
segues
am.
here.
It's just going from step to step. It's perfect. So we will get into that. But students just running out of money. You know, you come into college for the first time. Most schools do not include a course on personal finance, let alone budgeting. So you're coming in, here's a pot of money, say the meal plan's $690. You go in and buy a sandwich, it's $12.90, like, you know, $12.95, and then you got to continue to deduct off and try to be like, okay, so how much do I get to spend a week if I want this to last 11 weeks? It's a lot, especially when you're figuring out, how do I go to classes? I'm living on my own. Like, there's just a lot. So overall, we wanted to revamp the system. So most colleges you'll see do a swipe and a flex system. We had to do some work throughs to make sure that that was going to be something that would be successful here at the college, just because we have a different setup. You know, we go year round, so the needs of our students are different. So the meal plans that you referenced, we have them, there's 4 options. Everyone will be on this new meal plan for the fall. We currently have the new students who started in the summer, had the new meal plan, while the others transitioned out. So fall term, everyone will be on this new meal plan.
Got it.
So we have 2 block options. So that means, like, the first one's 75 block swipe meal plan. So that means you have 75 meals to use through the whole term. And you either use it or you lose it. All the meal plans now are, if you have the block, you use it that term. It does not roll over to the next term. If you have the meal plan swipes per week, that doesn't roll from week to week, and it doesn't roll from term to term. So that is a big shift here. We used to have funds rolling from term to term to term, and then they would wipe at the end of the lease period, which would be the end of spring. So this is going to give you a brand new balance each week or a brand new balance each term. So back to what I was saying. So the first one is 75 block. Then we have 110 meal block, and again, that's for the whole term. Then it switches. So then we have the 10 meals per week or the 14 meals per week, and each of those come with a $100 flex. So when you talk meals per week, Sunday is when they reset. So you have from Sunday to Saturday to use those 10 meals up. And a meal consists of a main, like a sandwich, a side, so like a bag of chips, and a drink, so a fountain soda or a bottle of water or a milk. So those are things that you want to just keep in mind. Like, okay, so I'm going up, and you don't have to worry about, is this $10.95, and then how does that affect my balance? Like, it's just, here's a swipe, here's your meal, you're done. You've got 9 meals for the week, and that's way more tangible and easier to track than a random balance.
I think so too. So Sarah, tell me, I mean, you're one that uses this meal plan. Like, how do you envision this new meal plan being beneficial? Maybe what hiccups might there be, or don't you think there are any? Do you think that overall, do you think that, let's start here. Do you think that sort of the one pool of money was a serious problem here on campus among students?
I think for a lot of students it was a problem because many students had trouble managing their money. Yes.
So this is almost more of a way of just helping students budget to make sure that they have some access to food on a weekly basis. Of course, it's not going to be their entire everything that they eat, because we're going to eat more than 10 or 14 meals in a week. But at least, if nothing else, we're hoping and ensuring that our students are going to have access to food on a weekly basis. What, I mean, just off the top of your head, have you seen and had firsthand, like, one of your residents in this situation, and have you had to help them, like, try to figure out where they were getting their next meal from?
Personally, I haven't had, at least I know of any of my residents, but I have seen other RAs with their residents, and I have seen people using the food pantry. Over break, when we were doing our training, I was seeing residents using the food pantry, and I had my mom, I was like, hey, if there's anything at the house that we're not using that we can donate, because I never realized that people were using the pantry as much as I saw over break.
I'm really glad to hear that, and I do want to move on to the pantry, because that's the last thing we want to talk about here. So many people may not know, students, faculty, and staff, that we do have a food pantry here on campus. Now, I want to start here. Obviously, if you're a residential student, this is a resource for you. But one of the things that I've actually shared with a lot of my online classes is that this is for all Central Penn students.
It is.
This is not just for our on-campus students. This is also for our commuter day students, our evening students, and our online students. And it's something that I've gotten to the point where I'm starting to send out messaging and correspondence every single term to my evening and online classes about this specific situation.
Thank you.
Because I think, let's just say, I would say many of our students know that this is a thing, but many of our off-campus students, our commuters, our evening or online, don't know that there's this opportunity for them. So Let's figure out what the questions are here, because there are many. First of all, where did the pantry come from? Whose idea was this, and how did it gain traction?
So the food pantry was something that the Student Government Association worked with Adrienne Thoman and myself on. At the time, she was the activities director. This was back in 2017. And we wanted to provide something because we were having such an issue with students running out of meal plan funds. We wanted to provide something to help our residents, and particularly it was the residents. But yes, it does go to every student, even faculty, staff, whoever would need it. So it was developed there, and then we just kind of found a space and got shelving, so we had places to store, and we've expanded from there. We started with non-perishable items, cereals, Pop-Tarts, mac and cheese, soups, and now we have professional clothing. We incorporated the clothing closet through the Career Services Department in the pantry, so that's the section. We have cleaning supplies, which everybody knows how expensive that can be, and when you have residents who are responsible for cleaning their units and they can't afford cleaning supplies, that's frustrating.
For not just them, but for their entire
Yes.
roommates all
Yes.
across the board.
Exactly. So we have cleaning supplies. We have school supplies. So we've had, Leanne, our student services assistant, can attest to this. One day I'll have to bring her on to talk about the pantry. But the number of requests we've had this term is the highest we've ever had.
Wow. And
Yeah.
we're only just over halfway through the term.
Yes.
That's incredible.
Yes, and it's not a high number of residential students at this point. It's mostly commuters or online students that are requesting. So must be your messaging you send out helps.
I'm not going to take all of the praise for that, but I think it's just been a thing where I think everybody knows about it now, and we've done a good job in getting the word out. Now it's up to really the faculty and staff members to help promote it as well. Because the biggest thing now, food insecurity, and I really learned a lot about this when we were doing CPC Gives Back, and we did support some of the food pantries in the area. I, for one, actually got to work at New Hope Ministries, which is essentially a food pantry, and to get to know the folks who were taking advantage of this resource and how important it really was to their life. It changed my life. It really changed my whole perspective on the benefits of doing something like this. So I'm so glad that not only did you help get it off the ground and you've sort of nurtured it, but that you're still such an advocate for it.
Yes.
And, have you talked about this in orientation or closer look and stuff like that to put it out there to new students as well?
We do that. Actually, I just did a presentation this morning for a closer look, and one of the slides that I talk about is the pantry, and I explain how they can submit it. It's confidential, how we fill the orders, and what all is included. Like I said, cleaning supplies, school supplies, personal care items, like all these areas that we do include.
So
and
awesome.
They can submit for requests, and we fill that.
Now, Sarah, again, have you gone through this process to go through the food pantry? Is this can you walk us through it, how simple it actually is to do?
Yeah. So during move-in, we tell all of our residents about it, and during our closer event station today, we were in the NPR room, which is right near the food pantry. So we were kind of giving everyone just, hey, this is where this is at, this is where this is at. And we were telling people that when you move in, we'll be telling you how to submit for the food pantry. But it is a very simple process. And I actually just went in there for the first time a couple weeks ago, and I had no idea that we had cleaning supplies, toiletries, and school supplies. I just thought it was non-perishables.
That's awesome. Well, there are 3 ways to put in a request for the food pantry. Under quick links on Student Central, you will find the form. Under the Residence Life SharePoint page, under quick links as well. And there's also a tile on the Central Penn app. So everybody should have the Central Penn app, and you can put in your request on the app through Student Central or through the Residence Life SharePoint page. Well, Lindsay, frankly, I don't know how you do what you do, but keep doing it because you do a bang-up job, and frankly, you're the touch point for all of our residential students, and you do just such an amazing job. I can't give you enough kudos.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And Sarah, thank you for being you, but also thank you for being willing to be an RA. It's not cut out for everybody necessarily, but you are such a conscientious person. You're such a good role model, and like I said earlier, the new students coming in could obviously have a much worse role model than you, because you are certainly one of our best students here, and I know that you're going to impact these people in positive ways. So I just want to thank you for all of your hard work.
Well, thank you.
course. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Nightly News Podcast. I want to thank the Director of Residence Life, Lindsay Garber. Lindsay, thank you so much for joining us on the show. And I will, I'll tell you what, in the winter, we'll have you and Leanne on, and we'll talk a little bit more about how the food pantry's gone over fall and go from there.
Sounds good.
Fantastic. And Sarah, it's always such a pleasure to have you on. I'm really looking forward to continuing to work with you as part of the Nightly News, and I would love to have you on another podcast here in the near future.
Thank you.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Nightly News Podcast. For Lindsay Garber and Sarah Walters, this is Professor Paul Miller, and we'll see you again next time on the Nightly News Podcast.